There is an ancient kind of wisdom that the modern world has slowly buried beneath noise and constant movement. It is the wisdom of allowing, of pausing, of stepping back. Somewhere along the way, we began to equate value with endless striving. We convinced ourselves that if we are not fixing, building, controlling, or achieving, we are wasting precious time. Yet this belief has not brought us closer to peace. Instead, it has left us restless, anxious, and often disconnected from the deeper layers of our own being. Beneath the surface of life, there exists a quiet intelligence, a current already flowing toward wholeness. But you cannot recognize this current if you are always forcing, always filling every gap with effort. When you dare to do nothing, not as avoidance, but as conscious presence, you begin to notice what has always been there. Life is not something that demands to be conquered. It is something that calls to be listened to. And in the act of listening, everything begins to arrange itself with a subtle harmony you could never have constructed with force. There is a paradox hidden within the human spirit. The more you try to impose your will upon life, the more resistance you meet. You might believe that effort alone will save you, that striving harder will deliver you from disorder into clarity. Yet this belief is born out of fear, not wisdom. The unconscious, that vast and immeasurable realm within you, cannot be commanded through control. It does not serve the ego's endless demands. When you insist on directing every outcome, you fracture something essential. You step away from the greater order that longs to unfold through you. Most people misunderstand the word surrender. They hear it and think of defeat or weakness. But true surrender is not collapse. It is the highest expression of inner power. It is a declaration that you will no longer live in rebellion against the natural rhythm of your soul. There is a place for effort, yes, but there is also a sacred time for stillness, a moment to step back and allow a deeper intelligence to guide you. Most never discover this truth because they are too busy trying to repair what is not broken, to accelerate what is not yet ready to arrive. You were never meant to carry everything on your shoulders. You were never designed to endlessly push, force, and control. What we often call ambition is, in many cases, nothing more than fear dressed in noble clothing. It is avoidancy, refusal to sit with the unknown, a fear of becoming still enough to meet the truth, hiding beneath all our actions. And yet it is precisely in that stillness, in that rare moment of non-doing, that something extraordinary begins to happen. The psyche, no longer buried under the noise of striving, begins to breathe again. You make space for your own truth too. Rise, not the performance you give to others, not the story you construct to feel safe, but the authentic wisdom that emerges from the depths of your being. Your unconscious knows the way, even when your conscious mind does not. It is not confused, it is not desperate, but it does not communicate in the language of logic. It speaks in images, symbols, sensations, and subtle impressions. To hear it, you must stop shouting with your will. You must quiet yourself enough to listen. This is why your life often refuses to change when you keep forcing it, because, in all your effort, you drown out the very guidance that is trying to reach you. It is like thrashing in the waters of a calm lake, wondering why you cannot see your reflection. The image only becomes clear when you stop disturbing the surface. The ego fears stillness because it equates silence with death. It believes that, without constant action, it will disappear. But the deeper self knows better. It understands that pausing is not the same as giving up. To step back is not laziness, it is profound intelligence. It is remembering that you are part of something vast, something interconnected, and that your task is not to dominate it, but to participate consciously in its unfolding. When you try to force life to bend to your will, you separate yourself from its flow. But when you release control, even briefly, you fall back into rhythm with something eternal. Much of your suffering comes from this very tension. You are overly involved in what does not need your interference. You try to fix people who must learn their own lessons. You try to hurry processes that require their own time to ripen. You try to dictate outcomes that were never yours to control, and in this struggle, you lose touch with a fundamental truth. Life already knows what to do. The same intelligence that spins the stars, that turns seasons, that opens the petals of a flower, this intelligence lives within you. It has not forgotten you, but it will not compete with your noise. It waits in silence, so dare to stop. Sit quietly, not because you are lazy or careless, but because you finally understand that true transformation does not come from effort alone. It arises when effort meets trust, when action is guided by inner alignment. This is not abstract philosophy, it is a lived reality. When you stop interfering, a quiet order begins to reveal itself all around you. Relationships shift, answers appear, timing aligns. What you once chased begins to move toward you, not because you forced it, but because you created the space for it to arrive. Step back, fall still, allow the deeper current to carry you. Everything is already in motion. Everything is already in place. It is you who must remember how to be. We have been trained to believe that suffering is an enemy. We see discomfort as something to escape, something to silence, something to repair as quickly as possible. But in this rush to correct what feels broken, we often overlook the deeper message hidden within pain. Suffering is not always punishment. More often, it is invitation. It is the psyche's way of signaling that something within us requires attention, transformation, or renewal. Yet when pain arrives, our instinct is to flee. We move emotionally, physically, mentally. We look for distractions, conversations, routines, anything that might drown out the ache. But each time you run from suffering, you are running from yourself. The discomfort you feel is not meaningless. It belongs to you. It carries the imprint of your personal history, and it rises not to destroy you, but to awaken you. If only you would pause long enough, you would notice that your pain carries shape, rhythm, and symbol. It reflects pieces of your past and seeds of your future. But to see this, you must stop turning away. You must dare to do nothing. When you allow yourself to sit with suffering not as resistance, but as presence, something remarkable begins to shift. You do not collapse downward. Rather, you descend inward. This descent is not a fall, but a sacred journey. It carries you beneath the surface noise of your outer life into a symbolic world where wounds become teachers, where your personal story transforms into universal truth. But this can only happen when you stop fighting the pain and allow it to be what it truly is, a guide, not an enemy. Most people interrupt this process far too soon. They feel the first wave of discomfort and panic. They tell themselves, "I should not feel this way," and they begin to seek immediate escape. But the deeper self is not concerned with your preference for comfort. Its purpose is growth, and growth often demands the breaking apart of old structures, the collapse of identities you no longer need. This collapse feels like suffering, but if you endure it with patience, clarity emerges. Understanding surfaces. You begin to see not only the texture of your pain, but also the greater story it belongs to. This is why stillness during suffering is so powerful. When you resist the urge to repair yourself too quickly, you give the unconscious space to do its sacred work. If you interfere prematurely, you rob the deeper self of its ability to reorganize your life from within. You remain on the surface, where problems repeat endlessly and healing feels temporary. But in stillness, you grant permission for a more profound order to rise. Insights you could never have constructed begin to appear. Emotions you carried for years dissolve not through control, but through awareness. Understand this clearly. You are not meant to erase pain entirely. You are meant to transform your relationship to it. Pain will visit you. So will loss. So will fear. So will heartbreak. They are not evidence that something is wrong. They are proof that you are alive. And when you stop fleeing from them, when you allow them to sit beside you without resistance, they become bearable. More than that, they become meaningful. They strip away illusions. They humble your ego. They reveal what is essential. And perhaps most importantly, they awaken compassion first for yourself, then naturally for others. There is a wisdom in suffering that cannot be accessed through logic alone. It is not the wisdom of the mind, but of the body, the spirit, the soul. To receive it, you must feel it fully, without judgment, without denial. This is not passivity. This is deep receptivity, the kind of strength that does not harden but softens, the kind of awareness that does not demand answers but patiently waits for them to reveal themselves. Do not underestimate the power of stillness in the midst of pain. That stillness is not emptiness, it is preparation. It is the fertile ground on which new growth can take root. What feels like stagnation is often an invisible reordering. What feels like delay is often a quiet reorientation of your soul. But you will only see this if you resist the impulse to escape. Sit with the ache, breathe through it, allow it to wash over you, to move through you until its grip loosens. Transformation begins not when you resist suffering, but when you allow it to shape you. The next time pain arrives, do not fight it. Do not flee. Do not cover it with noise. Do nothing. Let it speak. Let it carve new depth within you. Let it open you to truths you have ignored for too long. You have been conditioned to believe that wisdom arrives only through thought, that guidance must come through reason, intellect, and analysis. But thought is only one aspect of your nature. Beneath the chatter of the mind, beyond the routines and ambitions, there exists another voice. It does not speak in words. It speaks in images, symbols, sensations, and moods. It whispers, it nudges, it stirs your heart in quiet ways. But it can only be heard when you stop filling every moment with activity. It emerges only in stillness. Perhaps you have felt it before. Maybe during a silent walk at dusk, when suddenly everything seemed filled with meaning, though you could not explain why. Or in a moment of solitude, when tears came not from sadness, but from a deep recognition. That was your soul speaking. That was the voice of your deeper self, the one that exists beyond all roles and achievements. It does not care for status. It does not require praise. What it longs for is authenticity, connection, integration. But the world around you is loud, and the louder it grows, the more difficult it becomes to hear this voice. Soon you begin to rely on external direction advice, algorithms, opinions until you forget what your own truth even sounds like. You become so outwardly focused that even your choices reflect the expectations of others. And then you wonder why you feel restless, why uncertainty shadows your steps. It is because you abandoned your own compass. You filled your days with noise but emptied your soul of listening. This is why stillness is sacred. Doing nothing is not idleness, it is return. When you pause, when you let silence expand, you create space for your inner voice to rise again. At first, it may sound like nothing at all, but if you stay, if you breathe, if you soften, that emptiness becomes presence. A gentle awareness begins to wrap itself around you. Then, almost imperceptibly, insight stirs. Clarity arises, not through calculation, but through openness. Your soul does not shout. It does not compete. It waits. It waits for you to stop long enough to remember where your center lies. And when you do, the guidance it offers is unlike anything your anxious mind could invent. It may not give you certainty, but it gives you alignment. It may not hand you every answer, but it sets you in motion toward what feels undeniably true. That movement does not feel forced. It feels organic, alive, and deeply right. There comes a moment in every life when you must begin questioning the very nature of your effort. Not because effort itself is wrong, but because the way you use it may be working against you. Many people exhaust themselves chasing lives that do not truly belong to them. They push, they plan, they discipline themselves endlessly in the hope that more control will lead to more meaning, more love, more order. Yet they overlook a simple truth. Life is not something to be conquered. It is something to be cooperated with. And true cooperation begins when you stop treating yourself like a machine that must constantly produce results. It begins when you start listening to the quieter movements already alive within you. You do not have to force a river to flow. You do not need to push a seed to grow. And you do not have to control every detail of your existence to arrive at something beautiful. But most people carry the unconscious belief that if they don't make it happen, it will never happen. This belief comes from fear, a deep distrust of the inner life, a doubt in the intelligence that has been shaping you since the moment of your birth. You are not the architect of your soul. You are a participant in its unfolding. And when you begin to trust this, you discover something profound. Your life has always been moving toward wholeness. It has always been trying to align you with your deeper nature, but it cannot succeed while you remain in the way. You are in the way when you interfere constantly, when you evaluate relentlessly, when you resist everything that does not match your idea of how life should look. Many people confuse endless doing with progress. They believe that if they are not actively solving, striving, or improving, then they are falling behind. But often what they call progress is nothing more than avoidance. It is avoidance dressed up as discipline, and the more you push from that place, the more fragmented you become. For what you are building is not rooted in your truth. It is rooted in fear, the fear of not being enough. There is another kind of action, one that arises from your center. This action does not deplete you. It does not demand constant validation. It feels light, natural, aligned with something greater than yourself. But you can only access this kind of movement when you stop forcing life to bend to your concepts. When you loosen your grip, even slightly, you begin to notice cues that were always present: a sense of timing, a subtle emotion, a whisper of intuition. You begin to feel guided, not by external targets, but by an inner alignment. This alignment cannot be manufactured. It already exists beneath the layers of tension, beneath the overthinking, beneath the guilt and pressure you carry. To feel it, you must pause. You must become quiet long enough to sense the life that is unfolding inside you. Only then can you recognize the difference between the life your ego is constructing and the life your soul longs to live. And often, they are not the same. When you live from alignment, life responds in ways you cannot predict. People appear, opportunities arise, clarity sharpens. Not because you chased them, but because you stopped chasing what was blocking them. In stillness, your energy begins to reorganize itself. What once felt chaotic starts to settle. What once felt distant begins to feel inevitable. This is not magic. It is the natural outcome of allowing your inner and outer life to move in harmony. You have already spent enough time forcing things, forcing success, forcing happiness. Where has it taken you? If you are honest, you will see that your most peaceful moments did not come from control. They came from surrender. They came when you released the need to prove, to win, to know. In those moments, you touched the simplicity of being, and being, without striving, is the doorway to wisdom. Perhaps now, you are being called to stop, not as rejection of effort, but as an act of trust. Trust that life does not require your constant interference to unfold. Trust that your soul is not lost, only unheard beneath the noise. Trust that when you get out of the way, something far more intelligent than your ego will take the lead. And yet, waiting is not easy. To the mind that thrives on movement and answers, waiting feels unbearable. It feels like standing still while the world races past you. But true waiting is not weakness. It is not stagnation. It is an essential part of transformation. Most people misinterpret the spaces in between as failure, punishment, or delay. But these spaces are sacred. They are the womb where invisible changes are quietly forming. Something is growing within you, unseen, beyond the reach of your plans. You must begin to value the pauses, the delays, the seasons when nothing seems to move. Because these are often the very moments when life is working most deeply on your behalf. You think nothing is happening. You feel stuck, restless, uncertain. In your discomfort, you try to fix the silence, to fill the emptiness. But the pause is not a mistake, it is preparation. You are being reshaped from within, reoriented in ways you cannot yet understand. And this does not happen on your timetable. It unfolds on the timetable of your soul. The psyche is not linear. It is not mechanical. It moves like nature, seasonal, unpredictable, organic. Just as the earth needs winter to prepare for spring, you too need periods of stillness to prepare for renewal. But inner winters are hard to accept in a culture obsessed with productivity and clarity. You begin to fear that you are falling behind, yet you are not behind. You are being held in a space where the next version of you is still forming. If you try to rush, you interrupt the design. Doing nothing in these moments is not failure, it is alignment. It is stepping aside long enough for life to catch up with your becoming. The very urge to force clarity is what prevents clarity from arriving. For clarity cannot be chased, it comes in its own time, when your inner state is ready. Readiness cannot be forced. It must ripen. Consider the caterpillar. In its cocoon, it dissolves completely. It is no longer what it was, and not yet what it will be. To the outside eye, nothing seems to happen, but within, a total transformation is underway. This in-between state is not empty, it is essential. You too will face such phases, where you must allow yourself to dissolve, to lose certainty, to not know who you are. That is the very space where the new self is born. Most people flee from this stage. They fill it with distractions, with rushed choices, with commitments that do not resonate. They fear the discomfort of becoming, and so they run back to who they were, or they hurry toward who they think they should be. But if you can endure the discomfort just a little longer, if you can stay present without forcing, something real will begin to take shapes, something born of trust, not fear. To wait consciously is to honor the wisdom of your own evolution. It is to say, I do not need to know everything now. I do not need to rush toward the next version of myself. I trust that when the moment is right, the path will reveal itself, and it always does, often in ways you never could have designed. There is a paradox woven into the rhythm of life. Most people never notice it, because they are too busy trying to control the way life moves. They grip tightly, set rigid outline strict goals, and convince themselves that only relentless effort can bring order. But often, what finally restores balance is not more effort. It is surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up. It does not mean collapsing into defeat. True surrender is a courageous act of letting go, the release of the need to dictate every outcome, the recognition that life does not depend solely on your willpower. There is a greater intelligence at work, moving silently through your existence. When you stop fighting it, you begin to glimpse its quiet perfection. The illusion of control is comforting. It gives you the impression that you are safe, that you are steering the ship. But in truth, you are not the captain of the tides. You are part of the ocean itself. And the harder you try to command the waves, the more exhausted and disoriented you become. Forces are moving in your life that do not answer to your plans. Patterns are unfolding that you cannot recognize until they are complete. And your insistence on knowing, predicting, and manipulating every detail is often what keeps those patterns hidden. Clarity does not arise out of tension. It emerges when the dust settles, when the noise quiets. That is why so many profound shifts occur, not when you push harder, but when you finally release your grip. In that release, another kind of wisdom begins to surface. It does not come from calculation. It does not arrive through effort. It rises from alignment between your inner world and the greater rhythm of existence. You were never here to impose order on life, but to learn how to move with it. There is already a current flowing. Your only task is to stop swimming upstream, But to do this, you must let go of how you believe things should look. So much of human suffering comes not from life itself, but from resistance to what is. You cling to old identities, outdated desires, familiar stories. You try to keep chapters open, even after they have ended. And in holding on so tightly, you blind yourself to what life is offering in the present. Letting go is not failure. It is not loss. It is the opening through which something new may arrive. When you hold too tightly, your world becomes small. You miss the subtle invitations, the quiet opportunities, the unexpected synchronicities that appear only when your hands are open. Control narrows your vision. Surrender expands it. And in that expansion, healing begins. That is where you encounter moments that feel orchestrated, connections that arrive at the right time, answers you could never have forced. This does not mean you become passive. It means you act differently. You act not from fear or desperation, but from calmness and clarity. You wait, you watch, and when the time is right, you move not with panic, but with precision. Your actions may become fewer, but they carry more power. Your energy may become less scattered, but it becomes more effective. This is what happens when you release control. You begin to trust both yourself and life in a way that opens the door to true transformation. And life often surprises you. What you thought was a setback reveals itself as redirection. What you thought was an ending unfolds into the beginning of something more meaningful. But you cannot see these gifts while clinging to old definitions. You must allow them to dissolve. You must be willing to not know. You must accept uncertainty. You must be open to the possibility that life is wiser than your plans. In this openness, a deeper order reveals itself. So if you are weary of it, feels like no matter how hard you try, nothing works perhaps, it is time to stop trying so hard. Not as defeat, but as faith. Faith that something larger holds you. Faith that your life is not collapsing, but reorganizing in ways you cannot yet see. Stillness is not emptiness. Doing nothing for a while is not wasted time. It is the way you reconnect with the rhythm underneath it, all the rhythm that is already carrying you forward. In silence, you will feel it, the quiet current gently placing everything into order. And then, you realize something profound. All along, it was not your effort that sustained life. It was life itself sustaining you. So pause. Let go of the old grip. Rest in the uncertainty. Allow the deeper wisdom to move through you. You do not need to push every stone into place. You do not need to rush every outcome into being. The current is already flowing. Your task is simply to trust it enough to let it guide you. Waiting, then, is no longer a punishment. It becomes a practice. You begin to see delays not as obstacles, but as refinements. You begin to recognize endings not as failures, but as thresholds. What once felt like stagnation reveals itself as incubation. Think of a seed beneath the soil. For weeks or months, nothing seems to happen. Yet hidden in the darkness, the seed is breaking open. Invisible growth is taking place. Roots are forming, foundations are strengthening. Only later does the sprout break through the surface. Your life works the same way. The hidden periods are not wasted, they are essential. So when you find yourself in the in-between, in the pause between what was and what will be, do not rush. Do not fill the silence. Do not demand clarity before it's time. Allow yourself to be shaped in ways you cannot yet understand. What feels like nothing is not nothing at all. It is transformation, disguised as stillness. Trust the pause. Trust the silence. Trust that you are being held by something far wiser than your ego's plans. And when the moment comes, you will move again not from desperation, but from harmony. Not from fear, but from alignment. Let life unfold. It knows the way. There is a quiet rhythm flowing beneath everything. Most never notice it, because they are too busy gripping, resisting, or forcing life into their own patterns. But if you pause, if you step back long enough, you begin to sense it. Life is not against you. It is not lost. It is always moving toward order, toward balance, toward a deeper unfolding. The only question is, are you still enough to feel it? You may think that effort alone creates results, that control is the only safeguard against chaos. But often, what brings true alignment is not more effort, it is release. The moment you let go, even briefly, you begin to notice that life has its own intelligence. This is not an abstract idea. It is something you can feel. When you stop interfering, a strange beauty starts to reveal itself. Conversations shift. Timing falls into place. Opportunities appear at the right moment, not because you forced them, but because you finally created space for them to arrive. The struggle you carry is often not with life itself, but with your refusal to let it move in its natural rhythm. You keep trying to hold on to stories that have already ended. You cling to roles that no longer serve you. You resist change, even when that change is the very thing your soul has been calling for. And in that resistance, you suffer. But suffering does not mean life has abandoned you. More often, it means you are being reshaped. It means that something within you is dissolving, so that something new can emerge. Yet this renewal cannot be rushed. It cannot be controlled. It must be allowed. Letting go, then, is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that what is truly yours will never pass you by, and what is not meant for you cannot be forced to stay. Holding on narrows your life, but surrender opens it wide. And in that openness, something remarkable happens. You begin to see life not as something you must master, but as something you are invited to join. You cannot see the whole picture yet. That is why faith matters. Faith does not mean blind belief. It means trusting the process, even when you cannot trace the outcome. It means stepping into uncertainty without collapsing into fear. It means remembering that the same intelligence that guides the stars and seasons also guides you. So if you feel tired, if you feel lost, if you feel as though nothing works, no matter how hard you push, perhaps life is not asking you to push. Perhaps it is asking you to stop, to wait, to rest, to trust, not as defeat, but as alignment, not as passivity, but as participation in something greater than yourself. Stillness, after all, is not absence. It is presence. It is the space where the deeper current of your life becomes visible. In that stillness, you begin to see that what once felt like chaos is actually rearrangement. What once felt like endings are beginnings in disguise. What once felt like loss becomes transformation. Think of the seasons. Winter may appear lifeless, but beneath the surface, everything is preparing for renewal. Your life, too, has its winters. They may feel barren, but they are essential. They clear, they refine, they prepare the soil of your being. And if you can remain still, if you can resist the urge to run, you will discover that spring always arrives often in ways more beautiful than you imagined. This is the path of trust. Not trust that everything will happen exactly as you planned, but trust that what is unfolding is wiser than your plan. Not trust that you will always feel certain, but trust that even in uncertainty, you are being guided. Not trust that life will remove all suffering, but trust that every experience, even the painful ones, has the potential to awaken you. And here is the paradox. The moment you stop gripping so tightly, the very things you once chased begin to move toward you. Love, clarity, peace, they do not respond well to force. They arrive when you create space for them. They enter when you soften, when you open, when you allow. So let life surprise you. Let it shape you. Let it guide you where your plans never could. Sometimes what feels like collapse is simply reorganization. Sometimes what feels like delay is hidden preparation. Sometimes what feels like silence is life speaking in its softest, most truthful voice. Be patient with yourself. You are not falling behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. And becoming takes time. It takes pauses. It takes trust. So the next time you feel restless, uncertain, or afraid, Remember this, you do not always need to act. You do not always need to know. Sometimes the wisest step is to do nothing, to sit quietly, to breathe, to listen. For in that quietness, something ancient stirs, something eternal moves. And when you align with it, you no longer feel the need to control. You begin to flow. This is the invitation of life, not endless striving, not desperate grasping, but conscious participation in the rhythm already here. You do not need to conquer it. You only need to remember how to listen, how to allow, how to trust. And when you do, you realize that everything you were searching for was never separate from you. It was waiting, quietly, in the stillness, all along. Let go. Be still. Trust. Allow. This is where transformation begins. This is where peace is found. This is where you return to yourself.